We will be going through a couple of tips and tricks to get your workflow improved in Blender. So the first one's not really a trick, it's just a key command. It's Control and Tab, and you get the menu whether you should select vertices, edges, or faces. And it's really handy, like you have to move this edge over here, obviously, and then maybe you want to switch to just changing the vertex. And normally you would do it down here with these buttons, but everything that's keyed I think is actually improving your workflow. So that's number one. Number two is the split tool. Like if you have some geometry that you wanna remove it, you wanna split it from the rest of the shape, but you what you could do is you could hit P and then separate selection, then you have it separate, and then you can merge it back together with Control J for join, and it's still in the same object, but the geometry is split. But what's more efficient and more easier is if you take these and you hit the Y key that is split, and then you have it. It separates your selected geometry from the rest. Number three is my new personal favorite among all the tools. No, I found this out the other day by accident. Like if you make a loop cut, and by clicking Control R, and you're not really satisfied with where it is, this is very simple geometry, but in more advanced geometry it's even more handy. Like, oh, I want to move it upwards, so you hit G and then Z for moving it in Z axis, but it changes the geometry. You don't really want that. You just want to change how the edges flow, and that is when you hit G and accidentally hit G again, and that lets you slide the edge through the geometry without actually changing it. I think it actually works for vertices as well. Yeah, you can do the same thing there, but it's not as obvious, really. Faces, I haven't actually tried it. Let's try it. That does something. Maybe not what you want, but it's really handy. And the way I make loop cuts is also by hitting Control R. And if you didn't know, if you scroll the mouse wheel while using the Control R, you get as many loop cuts as you want. So that's something. Next on the list, there's the multi-view. I don't know what it's really called, but it's the multi-view. Like, oh, I want to watch this maybe through the camera by hitting numpad 0, or in the front view, or the side view, or the top view. But what if you want to look at all of them at the same time? Yeah, you just hit Control, Alt, and Q for quad view. Yeah, quad view I think it's called. So that way you can see everything from every side and place it accordingly. Like if it has to be really specific, but you still want to see how it looks in the camera view, you can do this. And this also works in the different viewing modes, like in wireframe or in the rendered mode. It just takes a little while to load because you have to calculate for different angles at the same time. Next up is the bridge tool, which can really save you a lot of time if you have a cylinder or any shape basically that you need to merge together, and you're like, oh, I take this one and hit F, and I take this one and hit F, and it's like putting a lot of faces between them. Instead, you can just select the first edge loop and then the second edge loop. They have to have as many vertices as each other so they correspond correctly, and then you hit space to search, and you hit bridge edge loops, and bam, there's the magic for you, and you don't have to do nothing. This is pretty simple geometry. It's like just 8 actions, but if you have more complex, it's a big time saver. And similar to that one, we have the grid fill, which I also found recently, which is like, oh, I need to fill this hole, and if I would do that, I would need to fill that, and maybe loop cut this, and then yeah, put these ones together, yeah, and everything. And that's tedious. So what you could do is you could select that edge loop and hit space again and search for grid fill. It's somewhere in the menus as well, but I use the space one. And that way you get a neat grid, really good looking. Next up is the grid fill. What that does is, like, if you have a couple of faces and you want to extrude them to make, I don't know, maybe a gear or a cog or something, and you extrude them all and then size them up, and they are part of the same mesh. So it's basically just like you broaden the cylinder, which is not at all what you want. So normally what I would do is I would first select this one and extrude it with the E, and then I would do the same for that one, the same for that one, and then I would like move them out. Not like this, not at all like that. But you get the gesture. But what you could do actually is you could select all of them, and then hit, instead of E for the normal extrusion, you hit Alt E, and you get the menu, and you can select individual faces. And what that does is that every face that you take, it separates it and then extrudes it, which saves a lot of time. So if you do that and then give them that, and you got yourself a sunny looking cog. Another thing that's pretty basic is the ability to expand and shrink your selection by hitting Control and then plus, or Control minus, which, yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory really. You can do that from a loop of faces, or you can do it from an individual face. You can do it from vertices like that, and that way it's very smooth in a sphere. Like if you had to take the top one and you just want to remove half the sphere, you just do that and you would delete that. Yeah, it just, I don't really know. I haven't tried it. Works fine. It's pretty much the face thing, but it just starts off with one. And depending on your complexity of your mesh, this might work differently smooth because of edge flow. But on basic geometry, it's really nice. I realize also that I've shown a couple of tricks without really explaining what I do. Like the edge and face loop select, which is really smooth. Like instead of having to select all of these, you just hold Alt key, and then you press between two faces. Like I want the ring that includes these two faces. I hit Alt and then right click between those two, and I get all of that line. And then if I maybe want this one as well, I can Alt and Shift click to select both of them, and do that in that manner. And that works well with edges and vertices as well, actually. The last thing I want to talk about today is the pivot changing tool. Not really a tool, but like you probably noticed that if you can if you rotate something from I think by default it's set on the medium point. Like if you rotate this and this, they will rotate around the center of those two combined objects pivot, which is here. You can also do the individual origins to make them rotate around themselves simply. And what you could do is also the 3D cursor. Like if you have the cursor here, you will rotate stuff around that certain point. If you put it here, it'll rotate around that. And that comes very much in handy actually. And the hotkey for choosing the 3D cursors as an origin is the period key. And it's already at period now, so it didn't change. If you hit Control and the comma key, you get the medium point. If you hit Control and Control period, you get the individual origins. And if you just hit the P itself, it gets to be the 3D cursor. And that comes like if you have this very simple setup with this ball doing a photo shoot in the studio, obviously. And you want like, I don't really want this light to hit it from the front. I want it to hit a little from the side. And if you would do it normally, it's like, okay, I go to top view and orthographic, and I maybe put it here and I rotate it, and it doesn't really directly hit it. It's not really that important in this case. What you could do is you could, by hitting Shift S and putting cursor to selected, you put the 3D cursor in the middle of the ball. And if you then hit P and use that as a pivot, and you rotate this around, and maybe the Z-axis, you get this automatic, like, it looks at it however you want it, and if you just rotate it in the axis you want. Actually, if you hit the R button twice, like we did with the double G for edge slide, you can also get the rotating special tool. I think it's maybe called a rotation ball or something like that. It makes you you have to try it out for yourself. It can't really be explained, but you get more like a free-form kind of rotation. It's not just locked around one axis, and that's really useful sometimes. And that pretty much wraps it up for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. Talk to you later.